Hello everyone, and welcome to week 9 of English 120. This week we're going to start to read The Valley of the Moon by Jack London. You'll be reading chapters 1 through 5 in book 1. You'll notice that the book is divided into 3 books. We'll start with book 1, go to book 2, and go to book 3. Please make sure you're reading from the right book. We will be reading them in order, so you shouldn't get too confused. You'll also be reading a few biographical essays about Jack London that are listed under week 9's conversation. You'll also be participating in a discussion that'll help you practice using quotations. You will do a reflection in your reflection journal about the first 5 chapters that you've read of The Valley of the Moon. Please remember when you are reading The Valley of the Moon to actively read the novel. That means you're going to be taking notes while you're reading. And in comp class, we'll be doing a unit on quotation proficiency. You may notice a theme here about quotations. Using quotations is a really important part of writing an effective research paper. Speaking of research papers, here is the revised schedule for your research paper. You will begin by choosing a topic, and that will happen in week 10. So pay attention while you're reading The Valley of the Moon. You will be choosing a topic for your research paper that is something that occurs in the Valley of the Moon, and I will be providing a list because obviously we won't have read that much of the novel yet. I'll provide a list for you to choose from, but what you're going to do is look at something that occurs in the Valley of the Moon and compare it to the modern day. For example, a very popular topic is often looking at prize fighting and comparing prize fighting to modern day boxing. So week 10, you're going to fill out a research topic form, and you'll present your topic as part of the conversation. In week 11, you'll develop your topic into a prospectus, and we'll be reading about how to do so in the Bedford Researcher. You'll also provide, as part of your prospectus, a topic history. This is you'll have to do some research in order to do this, and it'll be how you really start to understand your topic and the conversation that you'll be joining. Then in weeks 12 and 13, you'll be doing extensive research to understand the sources you'll be using to write your research paper, and from those sources you will create an annotated bibliography. This is a document where you'll look at several sources in depth and analyze how you'll use them in your paper. Then in week 14 you will write the first draft of your research paper. And when I say draft, I mean a pretty finished draft, one that is perfectly formatted, uses proper citation format, and has a well-developed argument. Then in weeks 15 and 16, we'll be doing peer reviews and self-reviews. And finally, in week 17, you'll turn in your final essay. Your research essay is to be 8 to 10 pages long. All right, for this week, you're going to be, in our conversation, you're going to be practicing using quotations as a way to really as a way to convince the reader of something. So please read the required chapters from The Valley of the Moon and the handout that I've reposted called Quoting Basics. We went over this, it should look familiar, we went over it a couple weeks ago. It just goes over how to effectively use quotations. And you'll also need to reread you'll need to read these 2 short biographies that I have posted here under the first question. So the first question I'd like you to answer is, who was Jack London? And I'd like you to find a quotation from one of the 2 sources below. There's one biography written by Clarice Stace, a scholar, a Jack London scholar, and then there's another one that's posted in Biography in Context, a database at our library. And don't forget, you'll need your Napa Valley College Library card number to log into the Gale database. So please read those, find a quotation that speaks to you, introduce the quotation using an attribution, and then include the quotation in correct format, and then give us the context for the quotation, what it means, and then tell us why you chose this quotation. You're also going to read chapters 1 through 5 in the Valley of the Moon and find 2 quotations. One that talks about who Saxon is, one of the protagonists, the female protagonist, and another that talks about who Billy is, the male protagonist. I'd like you to again use an attribution. So Jack London introduces Saxon in chapter 4 of Valley of the Moon. Include the quote, and then interpret the quote. Tell us why what that quote means about Saxon and why you chose it to tell us something about the character. Also, I'd like you to respond to at least 3 of your peers' posts, as usual. But when you respond, please tell us whether you agree with what they've chosen or you disagree, and tell us respectfully why. As always, you do need to post your initial post by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. But because of spring break, you actually have a week and a half to respond. So you don't have to post your responses to your peers until the 31st of March at 11:59 p.m. For your reflection journal, you're going to be after you actively read chapters 1 through 5 in the Valley of the Moon, I'd like you to answer the following questions. These are study questions, and they're meant to help you think deeply about the text. Please don't hesitate to use quotations from the text to help support your answers. So first, I'd like you to think about where chapter 1 takes place. What's the setting? I'd like you to describe the environment in detail, and hopefully some of the conversation posts from last week will help you with this. Who's the main character or protagonist? This is in chapter 1, and what do we learn about her? Why do you think she's named Saxon? Where does she live, and who does she live with? What is Weasel Park like, and what happens in the foot race? How is the relationship between Billy and Saxon different from the relationship between Bert and Mary? Who is Sarah? What do we learn about her, and how is she different from Saxon? What does she warn Saxon about on page 7? And why does she focus on how many pairs of shoes Saxon has? When London describes Saxon's home in chapter 1, he says, the earthquake had left its marks upon the plaster. What earthquake is he referring to, and how did that earthquake affect and change the Bay Area? On page 11, Saxon describes her image of God. How does she describe him? What does this description reveal about her? How is her image of God different than Mary's image? On pages 12 through 13, Saxon meets Billy Roberts for the first time. What is their meeting like? He is described as a teamster. What's a teamster? And who's Saxon's mother? What do Billy and Saxon realize they have in common? Finally, how are young people different today than they were in the early 1900s, and how are they the same? Finally, for your comp class, you're going to be doing a unit on using quotations. All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget, spring break begins on Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Next week, we'll be reading the next 9 chapters in the Valley of the Moon, so if you want to get started on that after you finish this week's, you can. And you'll begin, while you're reading, just make sure you're thinking about what topic you might want to write about for your research paper. All right, that's it for this week. I'll see you all online.